Okay, let's continue our lecture. Step number 4, data cleaning. And in the research field, we have a saying called garbage in, garbage out. If the data is not clean, whatever results coming out would be invalid. So that's very important for us to make sure that the data are clean before we do any sort of analysis. So typically, most software programs have some sort of the system to check for data to see if there's a potential problems. Uh, I'd like to use SPSS as an example for us to take a look at how system use how computer software can be used to identify potential data errors. And if we have like a couple hundred responses, we might be able to manually look at those numbers to find out if there are any problems. And but when we have like hundreds of thousands of data points, it's almost impossible for human being to identify errors. Then we need to depend on computers to do the work for us. For example, this is in the Excel kind of like we call SPSS data file. What is SPSS? Here's something I want to kind of give you a brief introduction to this very important software. SPSS is software that it's a statistical package and used by um, many researchers. In fact, most market researchers use it almost every day. And if you tell your future employers that you know how to use SPSS, and the chances are that you will be highly valued by them because quantitative skills are highly desirable, especially nowadays in this big data era or social media era. So this is something that I want you to uh, pay attention to. And if you're really interested, you can go online. Nowadays we have something called YouTube, and then just type in SPSS tutorial, and then you kind of figure out how to do it very easily, especially for the beginning level. And I have to admit that SPS is such a sophisticated software, and if you really want to be good at it, you have to spend tons of time playing with it. But you know, right now we're looking at some basic procedures to help us do some kind of data cleaning. And you remember back, we have, let's look at the survey questionnaire that we have looked at before. Again, this is a questionnaire now. By now, you should be very familiar with. It's a segmenting the college student market for movie theater attendance. And remember that we have question number one. If you look at the question number one, did you attend at least one movie at the movie theater in the past year? And we have two options, yes or no. And if your answer is no, then you're supposed to no. I mean, the respondents are supposed to go all the way back to the very end of the questionnaire, question number 8. And sometimes because of data entry error or some kind of other errors, we might encounter some kind of problems looking at the type of the data. And then we have here SPS is recorded like 500. I think it's 500. Let's look at it. See if it's 500. Let's scroll all the way down. We have 500 responses. The data collected from that questionnaire. Yeah, it is 500. And then for each questions, let's look at each questions. We kind of each row pretty much is each responses, and each column is corresponding to each variable. Let's look at the variable view, and you can look at this spreadsheet here, and then you can see that the top row we call it a variable view. Basically, we have a total of 31 variables, and for each responses we kind of have one variable assigned to it, and then so that as you can see we have variable question number one. It's a variable number two. Say, did you attend at least one movie at the movie theater in the past year? And then we have the responses. Look, if you look at it, so the values basically look at it, click on that. You have say 0 equals no, 1 equals yes. So this is the stuff that we talk about here. We have two possible values, and then when people when respondents respond to the questions, they say yes, and they obviously get the value of 1. If you say no, got a value of 0. So those are the variable view, and then you can see that the question number question number 2, and you can see how important it please indicate how important you consider going to the movie at the movie theater relative to other leisure activities. As you click again on the values, you can see 1 equals very unimportant, 2 equals somewhat unimportant, 3 equals somewhat important, 4 equals very important. So you got kind of idea that that's how computer capture these responses in computer recognized numbers. So that's how the SPSS is used to get to those responses for each different questions. And let's go back to look at the data view here. If you click on bottom here, it's a data view, right? Data view here. So we go back to look at data, and then we want to verify to see if any problem with question number 1, right? 1 equal 1 is like basically it's yes, 0 equals no. As you can see, look at the, let's say, respond number 4. Okay, 1 is yes, and naturally is going to answer question 2 all the way down to question number 14. Now, if the answer is no, if you look at the question number, respond number 5, say is 0, right? Naturally, you should be all the way down to, say, move all the way down to question number 9 here, right? So because those are should be missing, okay? You should see the pattern, right? So, and we want to let's say, how do we know if this pattern holds true? In other words, how do we know that respondent follows the respondent pattern? And then so one of the things we can do is that we can check to see the how many ones and how many zeros. So that's kind of, and then what we can do is that we do some kind of run some kind of steps. Let's look at, say, analyze. If you at the top, you can see those are the tabs. Analyze tab, and then we basically want to what's computed to run some frequency testing. We call that frequencies to count how many ones, how many zeros, if anything else. Okay, let's say count frequency. Let me go back again to see so that you guys can figure out how to do this stuff. I mean, it's not very important for our class because our class is kind of introductory class. We don't have time really go deep into SPSS, but SPSS is free to all Cal State employees and students. If you want to play with it, I encourage you to go to your Titan apps. There's one thing called SPSS, so you can play with it. Now let's look at the stuff like frequency. Okay, look at frequency. Click on. I mean, this is a very simple software simple to use software. Not a simple software. It's a very complicated software, but it's very easy to use if you have patience, have endurance to do it step by step. So let's look at this descriptive statistics. Okay, let's say 1, 2, 3 frequency. So and then it's just drag and drop. Let's say, okay, I want to analyze this particular question. Say frequent. Did you do that? Okay, so we can highlight this one and then just move to the right. This variable kind of a box, right? And then we want to run some statistics. Click on statistics. Okay, so for now, because it's a kind of it's a dichotomous question, so we pretty much can run something called obviously we cannot do a standard deviation, we can't do variance, we can do the minimal, maximal, and range. Okay, so we can probably do some mode or median, but remember we cannot do mean because mean is average. When you average 1 to 0, coming out as like say 0.6. It doesn't mean much. Okay, so we just do mean and mode. And then as far as other items, I want you to find for now, ignore it. Let's just run the stuff now to continue. And then if you want some kind of chart, do you want to have some run-down bar chart? Okay, let's do bar chart. Okay, so format. Do you want order by ascending values, descending values? By default, you do the ascending values. Multiple variables, compare multiple variables. Okay, so we just click on that stuff and usual default, and then we say click on the display frequency table. We want to look at the frequency tables, which you will see in the next couple of slides. We see the frequency table as well. So click OK. OK. And then now, as you can see, we have frequencies, right? And then look at the statistics. Question number 1, did you attend at least one movie at the movie theater in the past year? Okay, so we have a valid number, say 500, missing 0. And then we have median is 1, mode is 1. So mode obviously is the most often frequented, right? Range is 2. Now, here is some kind of warning sign. Why we have 2? Because we know 1 or 0. So why we have 2? Now 2, that's the problem. So now we look at this frequency. Frequency table? Say how many no? Okay, we know with no is 0, right? We have 50 no, and then we have 449 yes. Okay, that's 1. But somehow we have one called 2. Now this is not supposed to happen. We have 1 which is and we want to know where is it. Okay, where is it? And then so let's go back to the SPSS data file. Then we can highlight this one, right? Okay, and then we can say Control F, find 2. Now obviously you can, since we have 500 responses, you can obviously you can visually go all the way down to find where is it that 2, what happened. Okay, and then we say find 2. Okay, say find. Okay, now we find a 2. Okay, look, it's record number 82. Okay, so 2. Now obviously, based upon what we talked about earlier, if it's a 1, then all the way you can answer question all the way from 2 to number all the way down to question number last the questions. But if it's 0, then you skip down to question number 9. So obviously, based upon what we talk about here, is obviously you can take a guess actually. So how do we modify this number? You say look at the 2. Do you think it's a 1 or do you think it's a 0? Okay. Now, obviously, logically, you can see that it could be possibly could it be a 0, and then it could be a 0 in the case if that's the case. Then if it's a really 0, that 82 is not valid. Or it could be 1. If it's 1, then the case is valid. So we have to go back to the survey questionnaire to examine really what happened. I mean, usually each questionnaire has a number, right? 82. So we kind of figure out 82, look at the 82 paper-based questionnaire, and then to see what actually happened. Okay. Now, if we look at the responses on the survey questionnaire number 82, and we can verify to see how to deal with this particular record. Now, this is kind of example that we talk about. How to use computer to clean our data. So that's something that I want you to take a look at it and then figure out what it looks like. Okay, so let's stop it right here and then wait for the next part of the video.